Good morning, Endeavour, and a very happy Tuesday to you. You'll be joining us on Chapter 6 of our class novel, The Fire Thief by Terry Deary. Now, we left it yesterday where Prometheus has been given wings by his cousin Zeus, and he's also been told he has to find a hero but escape the fury that Zeus has brought back to life. Now, where do ancient Greece and the scary, spooky Eden City meet in this chapter here? Let's see what happens. Eden City, the Hall of Mucklethrift Manor. We left my story with the policeman just about to catch us in the act, at least getting ready to do the dreadful deed. You say there's no way out, Jim, and Uncle Edward will surely hang. It serves evil Edward right, but poor little Jim doesn't deserve to die. At least I hope you are saying that. Will Jim escape, or is he writing this from a prison cell? I simply must read on. There are two tricksters going around, the policeman said. His eyes were gooseberry pale and twice as large. His moustache trembled. He read from a notebook. A fat old man and a skinny boy, he went on. Uncle Edward spluttered and covered his mouth with a blue-spotted handkerchief. I swear he was going to say, I'm not fat. Instead, he stepped from the shadow of the drawing-room door into the candlelit hall. The policeman was reading from his notes. They wormed their way into a rich house and put on a show. While the fat man talks to the guests, the skinny boy robs the house. They robbed a house in Baker Flats and were seen getting on a train heading for Eden City. Aha, Uncle Edward cried. The butler turned. The policeman blinked. Aha, Uncle Edward said again. I have heard of these two villains. They have robbed houses in Denville, Borchester, Diddlehampton and Quigley too. The policeman peered at his notebook. They have, he said. And you say that they're headed for Eden City, Constable? Sergeant. Sergeant what? Sergeant. I heard you. Sergeant what? Sergeant. Sergeant what? Just Sergeant, the policeman said. Uncle Edward shook his head. You say they are headed for Eden City, Sergeant. They are, and they have a coffin. Uncle Edward crossed the hall and the policeman's notebook was in his hand before the sergeant could move. My uncle peered at the page. Fat old man. Wrong, he moaned. Wrong, the butler asked. Wrong, the policeman echoed. Uncle Edward looked up to the ceiling. It was his tragic look. His bottom lip trembled as if he was about to cry. His voice became high and pitiful, with swoops of a sobbing low. Uncle Edward was acting. I've seen these cruel criminals. You have, the policeman gasped, and he looked over his shoulder into the dark street. The butler pulled him into the hallway and slammed the door. They put their backs to the door. In Denville, Uncle Edward moaned. Phew, the policeman and the butler sighed. They robbed me. Uncle Edward's voice was breaking. They robbed me of my most precious watch, the old gold watch my grandfather gave me when he was a child. When you were a child, Uncle, I pipped in. He glared at me, as little Jim says when I was a child. He suddenly wailed. They robbed me of my watch. Oh, the pain. He reached into his waistcoat pocket and pulled out his gold watch we'd stolen in Mango Creek. This watch, this very watch that I loved with all my heart, he sobbed. We watched them do a show. Cleverly disguised, Uncle Edward went on. The thin young man stuffed his waist with cushions to look plump, and the skinny boy was a skinny girl, Uncle, I said. Yes, well done, Jim, a girl. You are looking for a young man and a girl, Uncle Edward sighed. The policeman reached into his notebook. Uncle Edward quickly ripped out the page and said, That's all wrong. Sergeant said, It says here something about a coffin being part of the trick. My uncle's hand shot out faster than a grasshopper's leap and snatched back the book. Yes, but no. He choked and tried to chuckle. We saw the act, didn't we, Jim? Yes, Uncle. And there was no coffin, was there, Jim? Yes, Uncle. What? There was a lot of coughing. The old man fell about with a lot of coughing. When the people rushed to help him, the skinny boy slipped out of the room and robbed the house, I explained. Exactly, Uncle Edward breathed again. The thin young man fell about with a lot of coughing. When the people rushed to help him, the skinny girl slipped out of the room and robbed the house. See, he said, tapping his notebook. Not a coffin. Coughing. The victim has made a spelling mistake. He ripped out the page and stuffed it into his pocket. Sergeant shook his head in wonder. So you would know this young man and skinny girl if you saw them again, would you? Oh, yes, once seen, never forgotten, Uncle Edward roared, and I will squeeze my grandfather's watch from the fat, thin hand of that old young rogue. The butler bowed his stiff neck. Perhaps, Mr. Slaughter, as you will be here tonight, you can keep an eye open for them. I'll say, Uncle Edward said. I'll keep 2 eyes open, nay 4. 4? Me and little Jim, of course. The butler opened the door and let in twisting ropes of mist, twisting like the rope that would hang us if we were caught. Then I look forward to seeing you at 6:30. Your performance will begin at 7 before Mr. Mucklethrift's guests have dinner. Uncle Edward bowed in return. He slapped the notebook back into the hand of the gooseberry-eyed policeman and stepped out into the mizzling mist. I slipped back into my grubby shoes and followed. The door closed. Only the distant flare of a gas street lamp lit our way down the drive. Uncle Edward strutted towards the road. Trees dipped like a ticking watch onto the gravel at our feet, then stopped. The city was listening. I thought I did rather well there, Jim. Watch me and learn. One day you can be a master like me. Well, did you seek out the most robbable riches? We can't go back tonight, I said flatly. They'll suspect nothing, he cried. My performance was masterly. There's a picture of Mayor Walter Tweed on the wall. So if he's a friend of Mr. Mucklethrift, he'll probably be there tonight. So, your point, boy? What are you trying to say? You showed the butler a letter from Mayor Tweed. It said he knew you. It said, this is to introduce my good friend Mr. Edward Slaughter. But you're not his good friend. He doesn't know you. And when you get there this evening, you'll be found out. Uncle Edward sucked damp air through his teeth and blew out a cloud of breath into the cold night. Let's worry about that later, shall we? Another problem for another day. But, I tried to object, Uncle Edward was striding out down the road, and I could feel the ropes tighten round our necks. Ah, you are saying to yourself, those two will not hang. If they did, then they would be here now. They wouldn't be here now telling the story. Maybe I'm in the cell right now waiting to go to my execution. You didn't think of that, did you? That's because you're not a writer like me. Or at least, I hope to be. Join you for Chapter 7 Endeavour tomorrow, 10 miles above Eden City. Who could that be?